Welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Susie Selleck, and today we are in Madison, Indiana at the First Christian Church, and I'm joined by Mitzi Lawson and Pastor Bill Johnson. Bill, Mitzi, thank you both for joining us. So let's get down to it. When was this beautiful church established?
The Stone Campbell movement began in 1801, and this congregation started as a start date of May 29th, 1836.
Bill, can you tell us about the fires?
Well, that's one of the noted things about our congregation. This building that we're in burned twice. Not once, but twice. The first time was in September in 1899. We don't know the origins of the fire, but we do know that everything was lost but the outer walls. The bricks are the ones that are the original bricks. The second fire was a Christmas Eve fire. I mistakenly thought that was from candles. No, it was a fan in the kitchen below us that caught on fire. And so the fire alarm rang about the time everybody was having their Christmas Eve dinners. And we're a volunteer fire department town, still are. And so everybody raced here that was a part of it. Some were coming to their churches in downtown who were having evening services. And they tell me they were so relieved it wasn't their church, but then they were so upset it was our church. And it destroyed everything except the outer walls again. The windows melted, the ceiling went down to the basement. Everything was lost.
And in the structure that's now here, you said there are steel beams because the outside bricks are from the original structure. Is that right?
One of the preservationist groups in town helped the church find how to do that. And so we built a steel frame inside the building so it takes the stress off the bricks holding up the roof. Yeah.
And it was the same fire department that fought both fires, correct?
Yeah, Fair Play was one that was a major one, and it's featured in one of our windows because of that. Mitzi's husband was actually one of the firemen in that second fire.
Christmas Eve on the building next door with the hose pointed at it all night long. He was on his way to his Christmas Eve service and had to sit on the top of the roof all night long. And he said that he would go out and after sitting there for hours holding the hose, that he would go down and have somebody replace him so that he could go and hold his hands by the exhaust of the fire truck to warm them back up because it was a frigid cold evening. I stood across the street and cried and watched our building burn.
Mitzi, do you want to touch on the stained glass windows?
The stained glass windows in the east side of the church are the four seasons of the year. They start sort of from dusk till dawn. They are representative of scenes around southern Indiana. They have turtles and morel mushrooms and flowers that are native to this area. They represent the 12 disciples in different scenes throughout the windows. Throughout every one of the windows are the Ohio River, which represents the flow of our county and our town, and also the flow of life. In these windows, too, there are beams of fire representing the Spirit, the Holy Spirit in the windows.
Now, I love any place that's got some subliminal messages. And when we were going around looking at these earlier, there were a couple special things in these windows. And without actually being able to look at them, could you touch on those?
Well, the most interesting thing that I just recognized recently was Judas in the background underneath a tree. He's got his hand up as though he's mourning or embarrassed. Yeah, he's made a mistake. And in his other hand, he has a bag of the 30 coins. In some of the windows at the bottom, there are fireflies, so it's just every time you look at these windows, you see something new because they're just so beautiful.
Now, the window up front, as you're coming in from the main street, the very bottom piece, you guys said that still has some of the fire damage on it. So that was definitely an original piece from the structure, the first one, right?
That is the only piece that survived following the first fire from the second fire. So the rest of the windows were made or are new, except we have the two windows on the Main Street side that are from the 1900s, which were a requirement of the Historical Preservation Society in Madison when we redid these windows. So they are from Lebanon, Ohio, around the 1900s. They're German-made. The rest of the windows are Neo-Tiffany style, designed by Stephen Purdy and developed by the Fox Studio in Indianapolis.
And the windows are kind of humorous in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, the windows that Purdy and Spock Studio made, they decided to set them in our location. So all the disciples are actually set in southern Indiana. They're doing different education poses and different conversations. But I kind of liken it to different Christmas creches where every culture makes their own image of the Holy Family in different settings around the world. Well, it also, time and place don't matter in religion.
Right.
So they're here. And setting them here is an implication that it's real, it's happening now. And I kind of like that.
Do you have some interesting stories to tell about this place? And I'm going to limit you.
Okay. Well, the founders, Madison was the large town in Indiana when it started. So we're a very old town. The original founders, we have about 20 names. Because we've had 2 fires, we don't have a lot of records. So we're researching who those people are. We have found David C. Branham and his family. His mother was converted to the disciples' faith by listening to Alexander Campbell, our founder.
Yes.
And her father was one of the main church planters for the Baptist faith in this area. And so in her obituary, I found that she made a statement, probably enough that they put it in the obituary, that she really felt that Alexander's idea of church was the way she wanted to worship. And that was to be more based on the Bible, more centered in, not in liturgy, but in primitive faith and making it real. So she brought her family here. And other families came, and it grew slowly, but it grew. They initially started meeting in buildings around town and eventually bought their own building that is now a parking lot on Main Street and moved into this building after a concerted effort. They wanted their own permanent building.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the style of pews. You had mentioned, see, I love all this, that it's a feminist style. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's a rectangle building. On the outside, it's a very plain building, which is typical for this age in our denomination. But inside, we turned it 90 degrees after the second fire. And so it's more intimate. The pews are curved, and the communion table is round. There are no corners on it. And that's a sermon in itself, that there's no head at this table. Everybody's welcome here. The baptistry is also round. Both of those represent a more feminine idea of architecture. And it's an ancient way of looking at it. And I like to preach in that spot because it feels like they're hugging me in the pews.
We talked earlier, there's a woman who graduated from Hanover College.
One of the early members of the church. There were 5 members of our church when it established, and they left in 1883 till 1917. 5 people in different periods of time went to Japan as missionaries. And one of the ladies that went to Japan was Calla Harrison, who was was the first female graduate of Hanover College. Which is awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at it, it's going, yeah, so yes.
Speaking of funny, there's an interesting story of Jesus being baptized. Can you tell us about that?
Well, our window on the west side of the church shows Jesus and John the Baptizer at Clifty Falls, and John the Baptizer is baptizing Jesus at Clifty Falls, which is just a part of this whole, the windows and pulling in all of the funny and all of the little just intricacies of, southern Indiana and flowers and trees and everything else, cardinals and everything else. That's just one of those things that, there's a beam of light coming down showing that God's love and supporting, the faith. And they're just, yeah.
I absolutely love that it's tailored to places from around the town. I've only been here once, and I knew right away. I'm like, yes, I love that. And then as you guys have elaborated, the organs are absolutely unbelievable in here. Were they always like that?
The original organ that was here prior to the 1989 fire was a magnificent organ, and then we replaced it with the rebuild with the Temple Organ Company out of St. Joe, Missouri. It is played. They play it pretty much every Sunday. It is beautiful just to hear it, and it's just a blessing that we have it.
Now, is there anything that I have missed or that you would like to put in here right now?
Well, the congregation, even though we are a small church, we open our doors to everyone. We have the scouts meet here. We have an elder group that meets here weekly. We also have a consumer-supported agriculture group that distributes their food from here in the summer. And those are all from our members' initiatives. So we also serve meals to children in the summer. Our congregation has volunteered to do 3 to 4 weeks every summer. And so we try to get into the community. Many of the people are on boards that are members, are leaders in the community. So it's a very interesting place.
Bill, earlier you had talked about the DNA of your church, and I just want you to expand on that a little bit.
Well, one of the things that we've learned in our research is that they were determined to have a congregation here. The fact that the building was constructed during the Civil War is kind of remarkable in itself. But both fires, within 36 hours of each fire, they had committees to raise money to rebuild. Within 16 months of each fire, they were back into this building. I think that speaks very strongly to their determination to have a place of their own to worship and to welcome people.
I think you wrapped that up perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. Mitzi, have I missed anything?
No, I agree. I mean, it's a determination and it's a belief in faith, and just we're not going to give up.
Alexander Campbell would be very proud. He'd be very proud. Thank you for watching another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today we're in Madison, Indiana at First Christian Church. Mitzi, Bill, thank you so much for having us. And remember, travel slowly and stop often. Bye for now.